You're watching Backstreet Gossip, news talk, current events, and political commentary with your host, Ron Ludders. Now, let's return to the show.
Golly, I love that applause. I'll tell you, it makes me feel good every time I hear it.
It's heartwarming.
Can we hear it again? No, we got to get going on the show.
You just put the applause
Welcome back. Welcome back to Backstreet Gossip. We have the big kahuna still here, and that is Mr. Michaels, Ray Michaels. Oh. And then we have the even bigger kahuna, and that's Mike Morrison.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not. But,
no,
I'll take it.
I don't dare criticize him because he's Scotch.
Aye.
And you know what a Scotsman like.
Yeah, we like a good fight.
The party's not over until the fight is over, right?
That's why the English always put us up front in all the battles. If we put the Scots up front, we'll get the job done for you.
At any rate, just a couple of comments here. You've heard about LD 15 right, and about the proxy votes. Interesting, folks. You need to pay attention to this because it's time, where people that become involved in the political system have a voice in the political system. It's got to come. It's got to come because we're at a time when there's a lot of people trying to cut our voices off.
Absolutely. And Ron, what a lot of people forget, they think that they have to do big things. It all starts right at the local level. You start there. That's where everything, you're in touch with the citizens. I mean, you're right there. Don't think that you have to run for big offices or, I can never do this, I can never do that. In fact, Debbie Lesko at the big event from that Trump was in town, she even said, look, I started as a PC, and she encouraged everybody to be a PC, precinct committeeman. She said, I started there, and I worked my way up, and now look at, I'm a congresswoman.
And I knew her as a PC.
Did you really?
I did. I knew her before she ran for political office. And
you've been around a long time, Ron.
Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, Abraham Lincoln and I started the Republican Party.
That's right.
You did a good job.
You used to have a dinosaur feeding dish, didn't you?
I did.
I got to say, Ron, I want to jump in here real quick. In the last 3 weeks, I have probably had a half a dozen coffees and lunches with people that I know personally over in the East Valley. Chandler, Gilbert, Tempe, that I am talking to them because they are such great people, and I'm trying to get them to understand that we will never effect change at the local level until we change the leadership. And so I'm trying to talk to these people saying, look, we can get you elected. We need you on the school board. We need you on city councils. Yes, it's always fun to think about running for Congress. I've been a city councilman. I've been a deputy mayor. I've been a county commissioner. That's where the real power is. Mm-hmm. When I was a city councilman, granted, forgive me, it was in California, but I was an island unto myself there. But I was always.
Did you turn the lights off when you left?
Jeez, don't get me started on that. We're on TV. I'm watching my language right now. I'm a Scotsman, remember that. But no, the whole thing is that the Republican Party is a great organization, and I've mentioned this to other leaders in the party in the past, to Kelly and to a great guy, Greg Safston, who's the executive director, great young man. I think he's got a great future in politics if he really wants to. But I've said to them, stop wasting all of your time and energy on U.S. Senate runs. Leave that to the National Party. Right. We need to concentrate on city council, constables. How many of you out there know that there are constables in your cities?
That's right.
A constable.
Yes.
It is an elected law enforcement officer who's assigned to your courts. And last year I was talking to Sheriff Joe about this, and I said, well, kind of describe it to me. He said, well, basically it's kind of like being a mini sheriff, just for your little court district. And last year there was nobody running, no Republicans running for constables in the Kyrene court district, which is Tempe. It's as if people are afraid to run. So this year I've taken it upon myself, said, okay, look, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to start looking for people. And so I'm finding people that I meet on Facebook who are politically astute. They want to see things done. They want to make a change. And I'm saying, look, run for school board. If you want to get rid of all of this other garbage that's going on, change the school board and you get rid of this garbage.
That's right.
Okay? Stop complaining and Do something about it. If you're sitting out there right now wondering, what it takes, it doesn't take a lot. Call your Republican Party. Tell them that you want to run for school board or city council. Most people have never even heard of a cemetery board. There are actually elected officials on the local cemetery boards. I mean, these are political positions that you can get your feet wet.
What do you
Learn
do
the
as
process.
a cemetery board member?
Well, I knew one once, and basically it was kind of like, well, I mean, business is dead, excuse the pun. But yeah, the residents are not really complaining a lot.
I got to put up with these two.
I was going to say, if you're making a comeback, there's only
week.
six feet to go.
Exactly.
Right?
Everybody's 6 foot under, but there are these.
But the name rings a bell.
Yeah. No, there's a few of them around.
Dead ringer.
A dead ringer. All right. Says, every family has one, and he's ours. But anyway, I'm going to encourage you folks. Stop complaining, or as we say back in Scotland, stop the whinging, okay? Stop whinging about it, all right? Do something about it.
That's right.
Get out there and say, I'm going to do something. If you get the idea, you want to run for school board, go talk to your next door neighbor. You know that person. If you're already on the same political wavelength with them, go talk to them. Find out, and pretty soon you'll suddenly find that their friends are getting involved. And that's how I ended up on city council my first time out in little Marina, California. I was one of those guys who went to every single council meeting, and I complained.
Win.
Because, I whinged, all right. But I complained about economic business things. I was a small business owner. I kept telling the city council what they were doing wrong and how they were hurting small business. And next thing I know, I'm appointed to the Economic Development Commission. A few months later, I'm the vice chairman. And then, less than a year later, I took 63% of the vote and became a city councilman. Now, it's not like here. I mean, in California, that job, it was $200 a month. So it wasn't a great salary, but you got to see things done. Right. And you got to be involved in it. So I'm going to encourage you, if you have ever thought about running for office, please call the Republican office.
Here's one of the things that if you haven't noticed the overtone here, you run locally, because this is where you can have some words and do things. And the reason I say that, when we vote for president, we all like to vote for president. You can't talk to the president of the United States, but you can talk to your councilman.
Yeah.
You can't talk to your local cemetery board.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you though, the number of city council people that I've spoken to, whether in Chandler, Gilbert, Mesa, Tempe, and I ask them, how is your relationship with your local state reps and your state senators?
There is none.
And there is none. And they asked me, well, why? I said, well, when I was a city councilman and a mayor pro tem or deputy mayor, whatever you want to call it in California, I was always on the phone to those people, letting them know that my city has got a problem. We need some help from the state. And you know what? Probably all of them were Democrats, but they worked with me, and I gave credit where credit was due. If a Democrat, senator or representative helped me, I would let the people know. Please, I want to thank, Representative so-and-so, Senator so-and-so for their assistance in getting this done. This is how you work together. You put aside.
In reality, Michael, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to look after the best interests of the people they represent.
Jeez, Ron, you're a smart guy.
They're not smart.
And just a couple weeks ago, we had on Senator Wendy Rogers.
Oh, she's a champ.
She's a rock star, and she was here. She said, I go to my entire district, everybody that I represent, and I work with everybody else, and I go to the city managers, and I go to the mayors, and I go to these towns that I represent. And she's the one who's being proactive from the other end.
That's why I like Wendy so much. I mean, former lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. I mean, she's a great lady. I know her. I have gotten to know her very well, and her husband's a great supporter too of the party.
Yeah, he came here too.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was here.
And I met Wendy for the first time at the recent Nigel Farage event.
Oh yes.
So it was kind of great to meet a former countryman of mine. I am not British American. I'm not Scottish American. Don't ever call me that. I'm an American.
Amen.
Of British descent.
Thank you.
Okay, I became an American. You guys are lucky. You were born here. All right.
Yeah.
I mean,
We won the lottery.
Yeah, you did. I had to come here. I had to wait 2 years to get my green card. I should have just snuck across the border. But anyway, that was 41 years ago.
You wouldn't have been checked for COVID.
I know. Yeah, it would have been amazing. But no, Wendy's a rock star, and I'm supporting Wendy, and I intend to continue supporting her. Kelly Townsend, I think, is doing a phenomenal job. We're going to be talking a little bit later about another young lady that I've supported in the past. I've taken her for lunch. lunch, and she has become a major disappointment to me. But that's a topic that we'll be discussing in just a bit. But yeah, Wendy, if you're watching, you, young lady, are a champ.
Yeah,
Okay, we need
you.
more like you, and I'm going to look forward to working with you. So let's all get together and start working politics where it needs to be, at the local level.
Yes. Now,
Well, I just want to mention one thing, because you're talking about Wendy over here. And, at the Trump event that happened on Saturday, amazing event, full house, 5,000 people inside, probably another 2,000 or 3,000 outside. And President Trump pointed out Wendy Rogers,
and Kelly.
Senator Kelly Townsend, and Sonny Borelli as well. And
Great guy.
he said, well, there's Wendy and there's Kelly and there's Borelli. And he says, wait a second, this is going to be a new thing. Wendy, Kelly, Borelli.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
That's a ticket right there.
Then he says he's my favorite Italian, I believe.
He said, hey, we're Italian, we're paisanos, that's why we get along
it's
good.
interesting. It's interesting you bring this up, and we're talking about up and coming political types. There's a young woman that I met 10 years ago. We happened to be sitting next to each other at a meeting, and she said she wanted to run for Congress, and I kind of, whoa, you're going to run against David Schweikert, and you're not political at all. And that was Michelle Ugenti. Now, she was married then, so it was Michelle Ugenti. Now it's Michelle Ugenti Rita, which was her maiden name. And she has had a wonderful career, but I've noticed a change in her over the years.
Now, she served both in the House
and she
and now Senate.
in
And the state
2010,
Senate.
2010 or 12, she ran for the House of Representatives from Scottsdale area and won. And she's been essentially a good, solid Republican vote. But I've noticed as she rises in with seniority and so forth, and confidence, that she has done a few things here that perhaps didn't ingratiate herself with the masses. And recently, the Republicans in the Senate were trying to put through a bill, as you know, and it was on voting and voting. I wouldn't call them restrictions, but voting.
It's a voter integrity bill.
Integrity issues, and she, for some reason or another, at some point decided to vote against it.
The one of two. Paul Boyer was the other.
That was a big shock.
Negative vote. Yeah, well, we knew
with
that was
Michelle. So Michelle has decided to run for the Secretary of State, which is a very important office, and it deals with elections, Ray.
Yeah. Now, Mike, I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was a big vote on the budget where it was on local television, where she was MIA.
Yes.
She was going to have a big event that was going to happen that night, apparently to let people know she was going to run for Secretary of State. But they were looking for her, and they were actually even thinking about sending out troops, so to speak, to go look for her because she was MIA. And when this makes the local news that you're not there in your position for a time that
If we
you need
cannot
to vote,
trust you at that level, how can we trust you at a higher level?
I don't know what the circumstances were, but I know that every single Republican vote counts because we have such a slim margin.
Yes.
And it was her duty as an elected official to be there. Unless, I don't know, maybe, because I don't know. Maybe there was a family issue. Maybe there was something going on.
Well,
but
normally if there's a family issue, you tell the president, and the president holds the vote until you get back.
You'd think so, yeah.
Yes.
But under this circumstance, when it's on the local news that we are looking for you and nobody knows where you are and we're calling your office and it's on voicemail, that's an issue. So Kelly Townsend comes up with a bill for election integrity. 2 Republicans decide they're not going to vote on it. It doesn't not pass.
Right. In the Senate, the Republicans hold a 16-14 majority.
Right.
Now, remember, when you take one vote away, you add one to the other party. So at 16-14, a flip-flop is 15-15, and ties lose.
And 2 votes means that there's no way
16-14, the other.
Part of what happened, first off, it was very petty. It was a very petty situation.
Yes, it was.
You know, for Michelle to be upset with Kelly Townsend simply because, you know, Kelly didn't come to Michelle and run it through committee. You know what? Sometimes you don't have to do that. Sometimes you find your own path. You find out what people want, which is what you're supposed to do. Find out what the people want and do it. The people wanted this, and Michelle, I'm very, very disappointed in you. I know it probably doesn't matter to you, but you know, there's a lot of people who saw what happened this past weekend.
Well, we've got a video coming up.
We do. Let's see that.
Ray was at the
very
event
sad.
Saturday with President Trump, and they were introducing some of the candidates for office, especially this is a statewide office, Secretary of State, and a very important office because they're the ones in charge of voter registration for the entire state.
But I also understand, or correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have a lieutenant governor. So
No.
in the event that the governor is unable to fulfill their duties, the Secretary of State takes over.
Correct.
And that has happened in numerous cases.
Whoever the Secretary of State is, knock on wood, they're just one heartbeat away from the governorship.
That's right. Now Mark Fincham, who's been on, he's also
Wonderful
in the
man.
legislature.
Yep.
He is also running for Secretary of State. He could not attend this conference, but they did have Shauna Bullock on. She was well received by the audience, so they were very happy to see that she was there. And right after she went off the stage, Michelle Ugenta-Rita was announced. And I think we have that to roll.
Now, before you roll this, we need to say a little caveat because I don't want people to say, "Oh, the crowd was rude." It's time for the public to wake up. This has been the theme of this show so far.
That's right.
Wake up! It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, and you're not doing your job. And so, this is a woman and voter integrity. She shut that down, which we all know because of the audit, which we'll talk about in a bit, has been problematic, and we just want to get some real answers. And so here's Michelle Ugenta, and the public was aware, very aware, that she had ignored them.
Yeah, let's take a look at this ad.
Election integrity bills in the Senate.
Because it was bad.
Do you think that's why you got booed off the stage? Senator, do you think that's why you got booed off the stage? Senator, do you think that's why you got booed off the stage? Are you here seeking an endorsement from Trump? Are you going to answer my question, Senator? You're running for chief election officers of the state. Why did you kill election integrity bills?
Are you coming back in now?
Michelle Ugenta-Rita, did you just try to have me arrested for harassing you? That's a yes or no vote. Senator Michelle Ugenta-Rita, did you just try to have me arrested? State Senator Michelle Ugenta-Rita, did you just try to have him arrest me? That's what Katie Hobbs did.
If something happens,
Michelle Ugenta-Rita, can you answer a question? Please. Your constituents want answers. Senator Ugenta-Rita, are you going to answer one of my questions? Or are you going to ask the police to arrest me again? Senator Ugenta-Rita, why did you kill Senator Kelly Townsend's election integrity bills? I'm asking you questions. You're an elected official. You need to answer them. They can't arrest me for asking questions. Why are you kicking me out?
because a person who said that you committed something that was harassing to them. So you're required by Arizona law to leave.
Really?
Let's go.
Who? Who was that?
Right outside right now.
Hold on. Get your hand off me.
One chance.
Tell me what's going on.
You've now officially been told that
So you guys are kicking me out of the
trespassing. You're on private property. Okay? You're being asked to leave the property. If you do not leave the property, you'll be arrested.
street, off the public street.
Go. Keep moving. Turn around and walk.
Whoa!
Turn around and walk.
Well, I was hoping we could just do a preface on this. So the senator gets off the stage, and Jordan Conradson, who's with the Gateway Pundit, was asking her questions. Now, when the press asks an elected official a question, they have several choices, right? They can answer the question, no comment. They can walk away. They can do whatever they want. They could be pressed. They could say, look, I'm sorry, I just want you to leave me alone. They can make themselves aware. I don't think that what he was doing was in any way harassing somebody.
No.
She was there. She made herself available. But to go to the venue or to a police officer or to whatever jurisdiction there is and have him removed as press because an elected official didn't want to answer a question, I think that was uncalled for.
Which they should answer questions because they are a public official, as you said. Now, the real question here is it that easy just to tell somebody I'm being harassed and that without asking any questions on the part of the authorities?
But
We are living in cancel culture, remember, where the people are so afraid of not responding that they don't want to take the chance, and having been in law enforcement, I kind of put myself out there and go, okay, the lady says she's been harassed. Okay, sir, stop harassing her. But if he's a reporter and he's an actual reporter with,
But he wasn't coming into...
No, I didn't see that.
He wasn't coming into her space.
No, and the only thing I'll just summarize and say, Michelle, you have just sunk your campaign, because that footage that we've just seen is going to be used over and over and over.
And that's
it's
the
unfortunate.
question.
It's unfortunate.
It is very, because I think she had a great future, but she's done this to herself.
That's the question that I mentioned at our earlier when we transitioned over to this part. Did she crash and burn? So,
Yes.
well, let's
and
the three of us. Let's determine: did she crash and burn? I say yes, she did.
I say yes. I think it's done. Her campaign is over. What is your point?
It would be incredibly difficult for her to resurrect from this position.
But who is going to give her money now? How is she going to fundraise when those videos are coming out?
Yeah. It's going to be difficult. Now, just for the record, Jordan was not removed from the premise for harassment. He was removed for trespassing. They said, you've been advised that you are trespassing. This is private property. You are no longer invited here. So, was the owner of the venue, was the manager of the venue, or the supervisor of the venue, did they make that decision?
Who were the people who came up that you saw them on camera? The one gentleman who came up.
I don't know who they
are.
Who actually owns that? Is that the city owns that?
It's sponsored by, what is it, American it used to
West?
be Dodge Theater. Yeah, but now it's
the federal something.
American Federal, I think American Federal venue. But who was that responsible person to say that they were trespassing at a public event? How do you trespass at a public event? How do
Especially
you
if you
point
have
somebody,
a ticket and have been asked,
but how do you point somebody out inside of a public event and say
It's
you
difficult.
particularly are trespassing?
Well, the presence of so much Phoenix PD would lead me to believe that building was owned by the city of Phoenix. Obviously, that's why Phoenix PD was there. I didn't see Sheriff's Department.
Well, I think the Phoenix PD was there because of the security that was there. And
Understood.
you were there. We had Secret Service there. We had Phoenix PD.
I'm curious about
I think the constable was there.
I'm curious about the name.
I wonder.
I'm curious about the name that they use, Federal, in the name of the building.
Oh, I think it's just the name of the company. I don't think it's...
Right. I think it's like, the Federal Credit or something like that. We can look that up.
I think it's America. Yeah, here, I can tell you exactly what
But
it
again,
was.
either way, even if it is a publicly owned building. I mean, to have someone, especially a reporter from an established media outlet, granted, wasn't NBC, wasn't CBS or Fox or CNN or someone like that, but they are a known
He was with
outlet.
Gateway Pundit.
Okay.
correct?
Gateway Pundit. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's called Arizona Federal Theater. Arizona Federal Theater
Okay.
is the name.
well,
So-
Arizona Federal is the name of a bank.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's
So I think they're the
they-
sponsors.
You're right.
Okay.
Right. So it's just interesting that they would have the ability to pick out one citizen and say, you in particular are trespassing. Because it wasn't a harassment. He said specifically this was for trespassing. Now, I did want to also mention during this, it was an amazing event. It really was. So Charlie Kirk, this was sponsored by Turning Point Action, which is a wonderful organization. And if you, find it that you would like to donate to something, they do a lot of things here. Charlie Kirk had mentioned that today the Arizona comeback begins. That was on Saturday. Paul Gosar was there. Incredible response for Paul Gosar. We talked about he was the only one that has been there speaking out about releasing these American citizens in prison right now without being
That's in Washington, D.C.
right.
That's prison.
Jake,
it's jail.
Jake included, yeah.
Jail in Washington,
and then
D.C.
he introduced Ashley Babbitt's mom. She was actually in the audience.
Now,
to
Ashley
be there.
Babbitt was the person that was murdered by the Capitol Police.
Right, right.
And I use the word murdered because she was.
Well,
I
I've
think-
seen the
I think
video,
she was-
and you guys know the business I'm in. I mean, first off, she was unarmed. And secondly, if you look at the video closely, there were a couple of uniformed officers
Right
behind
behind
her.
her.
Right.
That guy could have killed a cop.
Right.
Okay. I mean, when I saw those videos and I've slowed them down and sped them up and I've watched them, and I thought her hands were visible. She was clearly not a threat. Okay, she had no immediate
Unarmed.
ability to get through that door because it was barricaded. She was yelling. Whoever pulled the trigger, and I'm sorry, but his name is going to come out.
It
Oh, I
already
think it has come out.
Well, okay, yeah, but the name has come out, but we have not actually been told that definitely is the person. I mean,
right.
they've mentioned that. So let's be careful where we tread, because I don't want to say a name and then find out down the road that it wasn't him.
Right,
It was the
right,
guy
right.
standing next to him. So, but that is going to come out. Okay, there is going to be a civil lawsuit, regardless of whether there is a criminal one. And I hope the Babbitt family take that to heart and get a good attorney.
From your perspective, I mean, you are law enforcement, you are security. If somebody is unarmed, does that pose a greater threat than if they had something? I mean, if they had a pipe in their hand, if they had a stick in their hand.
In that
if they had-
situation, if I were defending a client's home or business and someone was trying to break in to attack their family, and I could clearly see that they had no weapon in their hands, I'm not going for my sidearm. I'm going to go over on this side for my spray, and I'm just going to pepper spray.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, you have to know what you're doing, and I know that in that situation there was a lot of fear. There's always fear. I've been on the streets. I know what it's like to be around a mob, and suddenly, but you have to fall back on your training. You have to trust your training, and whoever pulled the trigger did not follow their training.
Well, the rule of thumb is it's the last resort.
Absolutely,
Right?
it is.
You don't even pull your weapon out until you intend to use it.
Well, they don't use
You
the
never
word-
have your finger on the trigger.
They don't use
I mean,
the
this
word
is basic
They
training.
don't use the word deadly force lightly.
Right.
A gun is the use of deadly force. Dead being the key word.
I mean,
Right.
how many times have you seen a police officer, somebody in security, have their hand, but they don't pull it out of the holster?
Right.
Because once you pull it out of the holster,
You've
that's
committed.
intent.
Yeah.
Right?
You could also be charged with brandishing too, which is a strange law.
Yeah,
but,
well,
I mean,
it's like waving a gun. At
yeah.
somebody.
Look, I've been in situations where I've stared down somebody else's gun. Okay, the greatest weapon that you have is your voice, the ability to talk to the person, let them know, hey man, look, I'm not here to hurt you.
Well, you wouldn't say it in that tone.
No, but there's ladies listening, so
No, it's all about commanding the situation.
Oh, absolutely.
Like such a
You know,
gentleman.
you and
If I did it in the
again,
voice I would normally do, this microphone would explode. Okay.
So I think she was still kind of making her way in. I haven't reviewed it as much as you have, but was she standing? Was she in a position, or was she still down?
Well, the doors are, they're wooden doors, and they've got little windows in them and that type of
Right.
thing. And, it's... they've broken the glass, but it would have been very difficult, even for a person of her build, to crawl through that window. I mean, it would have taken a lot to get through that. Someone could have just simply pushed her back.
Right.
When you look in a situation like that, when they're shooting afterwards, you have to look at what we call the totality of the circumstance.
Right.
Okay. What is the totality? Not what just happened right there. What led up to it? What was happening after that? And in the totality of the circumstances, my opinion, you should not have fired that weapon.
Okay, so here you are. You're looking at somebody possibly trying to come in, but you see two law enforcement, one on each side. Wouldn't you think that they would be able to grab her from behind to prevent her from
I
going
would have
anywhere?
assumed that those two gentlemen in uniform would have handled the situation.
Right. Would you have even gotten involved at all?
Probably not, because I have a door between me and the
Right.
problem.
Right.
So let them handle it. They're on the same side of the door. I'm just going to continue barricading.
So
That's
any way you look at this, from a law enforcement perspective, or even from a logical perspective, that should have never happened.
No.
Yeah.
Not
Hey-
now. See, but it's always so easy after the fact when we can sit and we can slow these videos down to the point that we're watching in ultra slow motion and we're seeing where a person's hands were at a particular moment. But in real life, their hand went from here to here in a half a second. Whereas, I always want to make sure we give benefit of the doubt to those, but I think we need to have a full and complete investigation, and it needs to be done properly and independently.
And
They have no
Intention,
no
yeah.
intentions of
Yeah.
No, the thing is,
That means
I
they're
recall
to me
that,
that means they're hiding something. If you are,
Of course, they always hide something.
The only people who are against an investigation are those who are concerned about what is going to be shown.
When you think about events like this, and you talked about, yes, everything happens in a split second, but you are trained, you're highly trained in situational awareness. You are so in tune with everything that's going on. In a split second, you can look at everything and make a decision. And I would say that you are held to a much higher standard than if this was an average person who was not trained like that, who went and did something.
Right.
This person is a highly trained person.
Well, one would hope that people inside the House chambers who is armed and whose duty is to protect would be highly trained.
They would have to be.
Well,
You would
I
think.
doubt that. I personally believe most of those are political jobs, and I'll tell you why. Have you ever been to the Capitol?
I have.
Did you notice how physically fit most of the guards are?
Not very.
Between eating
Not
the
very.
donuts.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, some of these guards make me look like I'm physically fit.
You look actually very thin, Ron, to be honest.
So, I think most of these are just kind of political type
Now,
jobs.
it is rumored, and Josh Bernstein from Josh Bernstein Uncensored, sitting right here, said
.com.
that he believes that the person who did this also had an incident several years ago where they left their loaded firearm in the men's
bathroom.
restroom.
Yeah, they believe it's the same lieutenant that did that. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but I've been carrying a gun for almost 40 years now, and I can assure you I have never left my weapon anywhere.
Could you imagine? Okay, so I need to wash my hands, so I'm going to take my firearm out. I'm going to set it on the counter to wash my hands. Could you imagine? You have to be responsible for that every single second. It never goes out of your
It's your best friend, Ray.
Wow, it
Your
mind
weapon
boggles
is your
me.
best friend.
I was trained years
boggles
ago
me.
to do the self-pat down. Every time you went to say, you pat down. Okay, do I have everything? Wallet, weapon, handcuffs. Okay.
You're checking for everything.
You're checking. I do that in the morning. I stand in front of the mirror, and I'm not admiring myself. I'm making sure everything's in the right place so I know
I
where to
can't
reach.
believe you're not admiring
Oh,
yourself.
shush.
All right, so I did want to say that President Trump, as he got on stage, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of this, he called out a lot of the Arizona legislatures, and he was just so pleased that they had the courage, really, truly, that is the best word, the courage to go in there and say, you know what, it's not about who won, who lost. It's about, did we do this correctly?
Right.
And there was a couple other comments. He said that Doug Ducey is not popular with me. That's something that President said.
And that he would not support him if he decided to run for the Senate.
Yeah, I didn't want to go that far, but thank you, Ron. He said the 2020 election was a total disgrace. He said we got to get those routers. And this was something that really hit me. I thought this was so funny. He used this analogy. He said, if I'm in New York, 52nd Street and Tiffany's, he says, if somebody comes in and steals from Tiffany's and gets caught, they have to give back the diamonds. They have to give it back. Mm-hmm. He's saying that people are focused on, whatever happened. Let's focus on 2022, 2024. He said, wait a second. You're letting the person who stole keep the steal. Mm-hmm. You got to give the diamonds back. And I thought that was a perfect analogy for what we're dealing with. And the people that say, well, we just have to move on. Not in my opinion. If somebody is holding an office and they got there from means that were not on the up and up, they don't belong there. They're not supposed to be there, and they need to come out of that position.
Well, it's interesting, Ray. Katie Hobbs, our Democrat Secretary of State, and I might add, the same Katie Hobbs that called all Trump supporters.
What did she say? What was that
quote? She called all Trump supporters neo-Nazis. So all
Trump supporters
supported. This is what your Secretary of State thinks of you. But she had said, the election is over. Donald Trump, get over it.
Is that what you said?
Pretty much.
No matter what the concern, no matter how he got elected,
the election is
he
over.
just gets over it. You know, President Trump actually said, you know what? If I lost fair and square, I'd be okay with it. I'd be able to move on with it. He said, I just can't see it. When you have tens of thousands of people at your rallies and a resident-in-chief can't even fill 8 circles. He said, he said he wants to find the contractor.
That, Trump had a 90 mile long
right.
group, and he had thousands of boats going on parades and through Florida.
Flags waving.
Come on,
gentlemen. Let me just tell you this. Okay, we know that there were 5,000 people in the theater. Okay,
there was a couple, 2,000 or 3,000 outside.
And, well, I've heard more than that in the general neighborhood. And I did not go down there, but I was in the office Saturday when this was going on, and I was looking at Right Side Broadcasting. There were 109,000 people online watching this online.
And I know they were streaming it on Rumble as well.
Anything from others. This was just Right Side, 109,000.
Right. And Joe Biden's most recent
this is what I was just going to say.
Town hall was, 200 people?
The town hall on CNN, the room wasn't even filled, and most of the people were news commentators and or his staff. Mm-hmm. So
But he did talk about the man on the moon and Martians, which I thought was very, very appropriate for today.
Especially with all these billionaires going up in the sky. I've often wondered now, are UFOs, is that like, billionaires from other planets visiting us?
President
to see how to run their elections.
Yes, exactly.
President Trump had mentioned that he thought those circles that were surrounding the resident-in-chief were so perfect, he wanted to find the contractor who made those circles because he may use them in the future.
I thought you were going to say that they thought they were crop circles.
Oh, Lord.
Well, I think the resident chief said they were crop circles that he had
I have to tell you, sometimes when I'm watching things on TV and I'm watching Joe Biden speak and I'm thinking to myself, this guy is being abused. People are putting him there. And when Nancy Pelosi jumps up and says, no, don't let him talk. Nancy, just exactly who do you think you are that even you from the Democrat... Oh, and by the way, folks, would you please stop referring to them as the Democratic Party? Okay, there's nothing democratic about them, okay? Socialist. There's no such thing as a Democratic senator or Democratic congressman. They are Democrats, okay?
I call them socialists.
Well, understood. I'm being kind. But, yeah, Nancy Pelosi is a Democrat congressperson, and she seems to think that she can give the orders to say, do not let the president speak.
Way,
look what she did for the January 6th fiasco. She said that, no, we're not going to accept the other side's 5 candidates. I mean, that's never been done.
Yeah, and I mean, Jim Jordan, I like Jim. I've met him a few times. In fact, he was down a few months ago with Andy Biggs, and I was hiding in the bushes on the golf course, keeping an eye on them, making sure no one tried anything funny. But he's such a nice guy.
That was you.
That was me. I'm the guy in the ferns, looking out through the ferns going,
while
okay.
you're hiding in the weeds, there's one other thing that I want to discuss.
And by the way, I wear a smaller earpiece than this thing, okay? We need to get something a little bit smaller than these. But anyway.
Use your cell phone.
Yeah, okay.
At any rate, one of the things that I get mad about is not only the democratic, but that America is a democracy.
We've never been a democracy.
Democracy. Our founders made sure that we were not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. Now, I would question anybody out there that, and I ask who you voted for president, and you say Biden or Trump. No, you didn't. You didn't vote for either one of them because we're a republic. We vote for electors.
Right.
We do not vote directly for these officers.
Correct.
And they've tried to make us a democracy, but originally even our senators were elected by our state legislatures.
Selected.
The only people that were ever elected directly by the people was the House of Representatives.
That's right. And it was done that way for a reason, because the Senate was originally organized.
The state legislatures selected their
senators.
senators.
They selected them for the specific purpose, protect our state sovereignty and rights. Yes.
And you know something? I came to this country when I was 19 years old, and since that time I've served in the U.S. Navy, I've served in the U.S. Army, I worked for State Department for 7 years in Africa, protecting U.S. embassies and ambassadors, and in between that time I've actually done a lot of study because I think this is a great country.
Yeah.
I can actually look you right in the eye and say, yes, I have read from cover to cover the entire selection of the Federalist Papers.
Wow.
I went to law school. I'm not a lawyer. Never became a lawyer. Didn't want to become a lawyer, but I took 22 credits of law. One credit was just sitting in a courthouse for a couple of days, listening to cases and then deciding how the judge was going to vote. And I was younger then. But I took 6 credits in constitutional law. The rest was all in business and contracts law because I'm a businessman. But I have learned that this country was created by some very intelligent Scotsmen. If you look at the signatures on the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, who is a Scotsman?
Well, anybody with S-O-N at the end. Hamilton was of Scot descent.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to think.
You know what happened to him?
Well, yes, I know. He and Aaron Burr got into it, had a little bit of a scuffle out back. Well, that's all right. But one thing I want to tell people is I'm very involved with the Scottish Society, naturally. If you take a copy of the Scottish Constitution, which was written a couple hundred years before the American Constitution, and put them side by side, read them. They're almost identical.
Really?
Yes, sir.
So look at the Magna Carta.
Go look at it.
Even look at the Magna Carta in England. You know, this began to state the rights of the people. And yet today, what's happening? They're trying to take the people's rights away from them.
And these rights
centralize and collectivize the rights into the government.
Right. Yeah, the rights do not come from the government. The rights come from God. Yeah.
But I would love to see us revert back to the point where U.S. senators, the 2 from each state, are selected by the state legislature.
That's
because
right.
that way, if they go to D.C. and they screw up, they can just be recalled.
That's
Boom, done. You're done.
17th Amendment?
17th Amendment.
Let's repeal the 17th Amendment.
I cannot understand why America decided to destroy a perfect system.
Well, you know why.
Well, because they wanted more power.
That was Woodrow Wilson.
Yes,
they wanted.
And Woodrow Wilson was probably the worst president. He was the most racist president.
Oh, yes, he was.
This country ever had. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Good old Woodrow Wilson was the most racist president this country ever had. It's amazing. Read about this man, how he segregated the federal government, how it had been integrated, and how he segregated it whites, blacks. They didn't even share the same offices.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We're going to have to take a break here in a minute, and then we want to come back and we want to discuss a couple of things. One, we want to look at the audit. What's going on here with Ken Bennett?
Yes, amazing things happening today.
Ken's a good man, but he's gotten some trouble coming.
And yes, and then we want to talk, just to end the show, we want to see if in fact employers should have the right to say, if you don't get a shot vaccine, you're fired.
All right, if we're talking about shots, single malt or blended?
Oh, and I like the Isle of Skye myself, a little bit of a peat little, never mind. We'll be
Okay,
right back.
we'll see you on the other side. You're watching Hub Radio, Backstreet Gossip.
The Law Group is famous for debt collection, but the attorneys there do a lot more. At Culloden, you're going to find attorneys who have built a solid reputation in the government relations sector, and can provide you with a wide variety of legal options and strategies. Their experience in negotiations and settlements can assure you of their confidence in settling your case. The attorneys at the Culloden Law Group can work autonomously or as a team to take your case where it has to go to get the job done. With a measured approach and high levels of integrity and professionalism, they will work with you to bring about a settlement that's optimal and are here to serve. Call the Culloden Law Group today and put that stress behind you. The Culloden Law Group can be reached at 602-730-8385. That's Culloden Law Group at 602-730-8385. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marta Llamas and I own a commercial cleaning company. Now that many people will be getting back to work, let's get your facility ready for them with our total disinfecting, wipe down, and fogging procedures. Our two-step process will help you ensure that your offices are safe. Call me today for a free estimate, and together we can help protect your employees. Thank you, and let's continue to stay safe.
Fake news and leftist commentary have left listeners looking for the truthful news, reasonable analysis, and real-life solutions to America's complex issues. Sound like an impossible task? Well, it's not. There's something new, honesty in reporting, something exciting, something that is cutting edge. Fighting Back is a Hub Radio production that takes a deep dive into the murky world of unbridled state, local, national, and international political intrigue. And of course, Fighting Back also has a softer side. Tune in every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. Google Hub Radio Phoenix, click on the link, and then click on Video Live to be inspired by new perspectives on daily issues. Fighting Back, clarifying the confusion of 21st century mayhem.
Located in downtown Phoenix, the Culloden Law Group specializes in business and election law, civil and political litigation, as well as evictions and special actions. Call them today at 602-730-2985. That's 602-730-2985.
In a world where security matters more than ever, Lionheart Security Services stands head and shoulders above the competition. Whether it's airport security, high-rise residential and office security, event security, warehouse security, or even personal security, call the best of the best. Lionheart Security Services. We provide armed and unarmed officers. Our armed officers are held to the strictest standards of 90% accuracy, 20% higher than Arizona standards. When it comes to securing you, your goods, and services. Call Lionheart Security Services, 480-485-2304, or find them on the web at lionheartsecurityservices.com.
Welcome to Backstreet Gossip. News talk, current events, and political commentary. And now, here's your host of Backstreet Gossip, Ron Ludders.
Well, we're back, and we have Mike Morrison, and we have Mr. Ray Michaels.
Hello,
the one in the
everyone.
middle is Mike. And I'm Ron Ludders, and don't forget that.
And we just saw the
Mother
commercial
loves
for
me,
Lionheart Security. That is you.
Lionheart is you. You're one of our sponsors, and we sure appreciate it.
Well,
You've kept us afloat for a long time.
And we love. Can you pull aside so they can see that tie?
Our corporate tie.
Yeah, that is awesome. It's
company logo on all of our.
Little Leo the lion.
Yeah, we have the Lionheart. So
that's awesome.
Isn't that something?
And that's Scottish, isn't it? Lionheart.
Aye.
Who is the Lionheart?
The Lionheart. That was Richard, King Richard.
Yeah.
Richard the Lionhearted. Yeah.
Was he good?
He was a bit of a mean bugger. Yeah, I mean, you didn't want to mess with him.
Well, listen to the applause.
Because I think everybody knows what William Wallace, right? They all know him.
Yes, old Bill. Yes.
And he was really short, like.
Well, I've never met the man, but I understand from my history books that yes, he was a bit of a short tacker. But then most of the Scots really were,
Well, Mel Gibson, I mean, he played him, but I thought he was much larger than Mel Gibson.
Well, when he fought, when he went into battle, you better watch out. He'd hit you in the knee.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, they were much more agile. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I went to Scotland. And I saw all the armor that everybody would wear, but you had kilts on and you could run really fast.
Oh yeah!
And with the armor, clink, 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 and they would just basically push them over and just kill them because they were so top heavy.
Right.
Michael, did you ever go to the tattoo?
Well, first off, a tattoo is what you have printed on you. If you're talking about the one, if you're talking about one with the bagpipes, they say tattoo.
Tattoo.
It's a tattoo. Okay, you go to the Grand Tattoo at the end of the day.
Edinburgh.
Well, pardon me, lad.
Edinburgh, as in, let's think of Aaron Burr.
Yeah.
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
And it's Glasgow.
Glasgow.
You
ever have
I can always tell the American tourists, I went to Glasgow. No, you didn't. There's no such place as Glasgow. It's Glasgow. Yeah. Edinburgh.
What is a Glasgow kiss?
A Glasgow kiss? Good Lord, it's been a while.
Oh, somebody once said,
like a punch in the mouth or something?
A headbutt.
Oh, a headbutt. Oh, right. That's the Brits are famous for that. See, in the UK, you're not allowed to have weapons.
Right.
Do you know that in the UK, even this little pocket knife that I carry, like most people do, with a little thing to clip onto you, do you know that this is a felony in the UK?
Are you serious?
Yeah, it is.
Well, that's where most of their murders occur now with knives.
Knife crime, because all the punks, they can't get their hands on, guns because they're not allowed unless you have a hunting rifle. And the funny thing is, in England, silencers, I'm not talking suppressors, I'm talking silencers, are perfectly legal for your hunting rifle. So you don't, you don't want to wake up the gentry and the landowners. So you can have a silencer, a real silencer, just like a sniper's rifle, But
so you hear.
Yeah, if that. I mean, I've been on some of those times where an actual hitting the metal target made more noise than the bullet coming out. You're like, oh, okay, that's how it's done.
Well, tell you what, gentlemen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about the Arizona audit.
Well, do we have enough time?
Well, we don't, but we've been teasing people a little bit about it, so I'd like to be able to discuss a little more.
Well, the latest news, of course, is with Ken Bennett. I mean, everybody thinks that Ken is in charge of the audit. He's not in charge. He's the liaison. My first connection with that group was actually Ken called me 2 days before the audit began because, somebody had forgotten about security.
We had Ken Bennett on the show, and we stressed to him, Josh Bernstein, Uncensored.com, was here, and we stressed to him that security, not only for the people inside, but for anybody walking in, because we knew that there would be people outside.
And the problem is, and Ken has no fault in this, and I'm going to say that right now. Ken has no fault in this because the things that were going on, they called me and they said, Mike, we need security. And I said, look, I need security too. With at that time, everybody getting paid, almost $600 a week to stay home.
Right.
I was having, even today, on this particular day, my company, we need to hire 28 full-time security guards, and that's at the $15, $16 an hour range. That's not talking about my executive protection guys, because those are all much higher pay. But we need 28 people. I can't get them. So we're doing the same amount of work with 68 to 70 people that we used to do with 100. And so a lot of my guys are doing 50, 60, 70 hours a week but we can't get anybody. But anyway, that was part of the problem back then. So very thankful. Very, very thankful to the Arizona Rangers that they stepped up.
Yes, they did.
They came in. They did a fantastic job. I mean, I'm one of those people.
Now, did you ask them? Did you liaison?
No,
with them?
actually, well, their commander, another Michael, we met up the next morning along with Ken and figuring out how they were going to do things. Because I said to Ken, I said, look, I can maybe spare a couple of guys.
Right.
I said, but I can't suddenly, if this was a year and a half
ago,
ago,
huge building.
20, 30 people, I could have put that together, but not with everybody not working. So it was just bad timing, and I felt very bad for Ken because he's such a great guy. He's trying to do the right thing. But now it seems that maybe the people that were working behind the scenes are now trying to push him back and don't want him to see.
Give us an idea, because you said that he's not in charge. He's the liaison.
He's the liaison.
We know that the Senate, President Fan, asked him, because they're very close friends. He was Secretary of State. He had gone through an audit before.
Well, as Secretary of State, I mean, he knew what elections were supposed to be.
So as a liaison, how does that differ from being in charge? Who is in charge?
Well, that's a good question. I don't personally know.
The state Senate is actually in charge.
Yes, they're the ones overseeing.
That there is any one person in charge.
But don't they hire some third party to?
Well, that's supposedly the cyber ninjas. They were hired for their expertise and credit where credit is due. These guys are good at what they do. I know some people don't have some negative things. They know what they're doing. If they've made mistakes along the way, then we need to know that. Because from the very day one, I've had other Democrats come up to me and say, well, why are you guys doing this? I said, look, 2 reasons. We do the audit. We find something's wrong. We fix it. We move on. Or number 2, we do the audit. We find nothing wrong. We move on. Either way, we're going to move on, and we will all know the truth.
Right.
To which I always ask, and having been in the industry, it's like the only people who are ever afraid of the outcome of an investigation are those who have something to hide. If you have nothing to hide, or if you have a fear of what's going to be, maybe you don't know what's going to be there because maybe you're not a part of it, but all of a sudden you're starting to think, well, geez, they may just find out that there was fraud. Was there fraud? I have no idea. Was there any cheating? I have no idea. I have my suspicions upon which if I was hired, I would do an investigation.
Right.
But I would find out all the facts. Maybe there was nothing. But it's looking very different in Georgia right now. It's looking very different in Pennsylvania.
Fulton County, yeah. So Ron, you are an auditor. You know numbers, right? Michael, you know the security portion. It seems to me that this audit, in its entirety, has several different, very, very specific parts of the puzzle that you would need one person or a group of people to say, you focus Cyber Ninja, you focus on the cyber side, you focus on the security side, you focus on the chain of custody side, you focus on, do we follow the rules and regulations? Everybody focuses, and they all come and report to a person, an individual, a group of people.
In the military intelligence, we call that compartmentalization.
Right.
We all compartmentalize. You do your thing over there. I'm going to do my thing. We don't watch each other's thing. When everything is done, then we bring everything back together and say, this is what we found. Otherwise, you have cross-contamination of information. And that is something you don't want. So I hope that this audit does show, one way or the other, all that I want it to show is the truth.
Has it been compartmentalized as an audit?
Pretty much,
do we know?
Yes. Now here's one of the problems. Okay, we have the original count that was certified by the Secretary of State, the governor, and.
Didn't she say something about Trump supporters?
She did.
I think we covered that last hour.
I think she said something like,
we cover that
Trump
every show.
supporters are neo-Nazis.
Okay.
But at any rate, yes, so they had the original.
I take great offense to that. My great uncle who helped raise me
was a neo-Nazi?
No.
He was a Nazi.
He was a Highlander. He was part of the Black Watch, which is the Scottish Highland Watch. Okay, and I heard the stories when I was a young lad from some of the guys he was with who told me over and over again the stories about when their landing craft hit the beach. He was an officer. He dropped his Enfield He's in full kilt. He pulled his sword and shouted, "Follow me, lads."
Wow.
And the Germans must have thought he was one ugly broad, because, I mean, there's this guy running up the beach in a kilt, armed with just a sword, but he survived.
Wow.
You know, my great-uncle fought the Nazis. Don't you ever, darken his history by telling me that I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah.
Yes, do you hear that?
You won't like my response.
Do you hear that, Hobbs? At any rate, back to the audit. Okay, so
Yes.
you have the original count. Then they took a second count. Okay. They're doing a third count now. Why would you do the third count? Because the first and second counts don't balance. Is why you do a third count. So we already know there's a problem in River City. Okay, so that's what they're doing now. Now, talk about the compartmentalization, and I understand this might have been part of the problems, is that Ken Bennett had gone into an area where the people thought they had a proprietary interest, and he was over there asking questions about this particular area. Now, I don't want to get into some of the things that I have heard because I have not confirmed them, Ray, and I don't want to get anybody because most of these people have been guests on our show,
right?
And I don't want to alienate anybody. But when you have this something as important as this, and that's not your area, and you're the liaison, it's how's everything going on your area? Well, we have a problem. What's the problem? We don't have enough people. Can you get me more people? But you don't want to ask the results of what they're finding, because that's compartmentalized.
It's prejudiced too. Your response becomes, well, obviously it must be X, Y, Z. When in actual fact you turn around and find it was A, B, C. But you prejudice your own mind as to what you think the answer is going to be.
Right. And so
you can't do that in an
And so I
investigation.
think there was some of that was going on. There were some people perhaps had their, somebody said something about their organization, where they were from. I've heard all kinds of rumors, and I would expect all kinds of rumors. I mean, what's the first thing you do? And you might be very aware of this, Michael. The first thing you do in any legal issue is you try to discredit the person that's bringing the charges.
Well, that's the natural thing to do. You want to make it seem that they're not truthful, so therefore anything they say after that fact, obviously that can't be true either. Exactly. I mean, that's law school 101. I mean, discredit your opponent.
I think they're trying to, like you said, once again, compartmentalize these things so that you can't say, well, gee whiz, my area is good, but Ray's area, and I know somebody's whispered to me, Ray, that your area is not being run effectively. And so
who was it?
We'll meet him up back.
Yeah.
No, but when that happens, then of course both sides start looking at each other, and when you're supposed to be working with each other, now you're saying, well, one of my team thinks I'm cheating or whatever, I'm not doing my job. Now the internal structure starts to fall apart because now you start thinking, well, there's a problem within our house.
That's right, a house divided against
itself.
And that's exactly what the press and the Democrats want you to believe, that this is not being effectively run. I mean, how many times have you heard that there were ballots in a cabin up in Wyoming? I mean, I've heard that till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah. If there were ballots in a cabin up in Wyoming, why didn't the person who knows that there are ballots in a cabin in Wyoming go up to Wyoming to the cabin and take the ballots? I mean,
good point. You see, because it wasn't true.
It was too cold at the time.
That's the problem with these things. I like to joke and say, because we just mentioned a quote by Abraham Lincoln, but it wasn't Abraham Lincoln who said you can't believe everything you read on the internet?
That's exactly what he said. Yes. We have it on tape.
And trouble is, there's going to be young people out there tomorrow going, yeah, Abraham Lincoln said you shouldn't believe everything.
And he was ahead of his time.
Oh, at least 200 years. Well, 100 and some odd. But anyway, no, that's
Neil's back there trying to fact check it.
Our highly intelligent engineer is sitting back there going, He's
doing
he's online right now. He's fact checking. Yeah.
Abe Lincoln.
Yes.
Was he the first president of the United States?
Hey, Blinken. Did you ever see that movie?
What is it?
The guy was blind. His name was Blinken. Everybody'd say, "Hey, Blinken," and he'd say, "Did you say Abe Lincoln?"
Is there a button for his microphone?
I can't remember the name of it. I always thought that was funny. Hey,
geez.
Blinken.
Okay, whatever. Okay, yeah.
Anyway, back to reality here. So I think there's some of this. I think at the end here, everybody needs to keep cooler heads.
Thank you.
Do your job, and then when the things begin to, as you bring it forth, so everybody's issues are laid on the table, because you could have one person did something wrong and it just magnifies itself through the system. And it doesn't necessarily have to be purposeful.
Okay, so I want both of your opinions on this. So from an audit perspective, from a security perspective, how many things need to be out of place? Let's not talk about anything other than that. Out of place, done incorrectly, for the whole election to be called and said, you know what, there's just too many things. Is there a number? Is there a point?
Yes, there is a number.
Yeah?
There is a number.
And what is that number?
10,848.
That's the number that President Trump supposedly, because I don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly he lost by. But when you see numbers and people are talking about they found 11,000 votes or 11,000 plus.
Okay, that's in one bucket.
Yes.
We found 11,000
So, okay, without 11,000, that's more than what? And
the margin of victory. So it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you have a big bunch of ballots, when you look at them, you say, okay, Biden. No, they didn't choose senator or congressman. They only, 11,000 people only voted for the president and didn't go down ticket. I have to ask the CPA here, what is the statistical probability of that?
Well, I can't tell you what the statistical probability was, but it is not very likely.
The probability is low.
For instance,
statistically, it's infinite. It's so
for
tiny.
instance, I believe it was Georgia. It was one of those states where, as ballots came in after everything was closed, and they kept giving these updates. The updates were the same percentage of.
In several counties in different states.
In other words, if Trump got 30% of the vote, Biden got 70% of the vote. Vote after vote after vote.
Every tranche that came in
county,
was always 30,
county
70,
after
30,
county
70.
after county after
so
county.
we know that is highly improbable.
Correct.
And we know that
I think it would actually be statistically impossible.
Yeah.
And that an algorithm was making the decisions there.
Okay, so
splitting those votes out.
So there's
on a fractional basis.
So there's several different factors here, right? So you have one bucket that says, okay, there's a 11,000 discrepancy, and we have another one that's 70,000 discrepancy, and we have another one that's 13,000 discrepancy, and we have another one. How many of those buckets do you actually need to say, well, any one of them on their own could have affected the election?
That's a good point.
But here's now 4 or 5 buckets that you know that the election was compromised.
See, I got to tell you this. I'm just going to come out and say, I find it very, very hard to believe that a bunch of people can't sit in a room and count. That's all we're doing. We're counting.
Right.
Okay? I mean, my God, they taught us out on Sesame Street how to count.
You better be careful. There are people in the audience here that have been down there counting. And
my name's
they're
the
sworn
count
to
because I
secrecy.
love to count things.
Well, yes, everybody has signed an NDA, non-disclosure
sound
agreement.
to secrecy, but by the look on their face, I'm thinking they're scowling at us.
Okay, but keep in mind, though.
We're not blaming anybody.
We don't know what we're doing.
Keep in mind that this is a multifunction election, though. You have paper ballots. You have the scanned images of the paper ballots, and they need to be the same.
Well,
correct.
The one thing,
and they are not.
The one thing that we have to know is that we have to say that number that we just came up to 10,848, I think that's the correct number, but it might be off by a couple votes. Without that, if you had 10,000 votes, see, you don't know who they went to.
Right.
That's the issue. But you have to say, if all of those votes went just the opposite, would it change the results of the election? Well, if it's 10,000, it wouldn't. Biden still would have won by 848.
But if it's 11,000,
but if it's 11,000,
then
he could have lost by a couple thousand.
I'm more of the logical side, right? I see one guy attracting tens of thousands of people at events, and I see another person who's not really campaigning, going nowhere, and then when they do, nobody shows up. And they want me to believe that I think he's the oldest president elected,
Yes.
that he got more votes than anybody in the history, not Obama, not Clinton, not any of the previous presidents. They got more votes when we know that President Trump received, and he was the only president in history to receive more votes the second time around. That's never happened before.
He was approximately 10 million more votes than he got in 2016.
But it's never happened.
No.
So how can that happen
but-
and the other person who didn't campaign get more than he got the second time with 10 million more?
It's interesting. We've done this before, and I probably need to get my numbers back out of the computer. We went through this back in probably November.
Yeah.
In terms of, if you take the number of registered voters in the United States, and we know that 62% of the people that were registered voted, we know what that number is. Then if you take the number we know that Donald Trump got was approximately 75 million votes.
Right. The math doesn't add up. Yeah.
The difference is not 80, what did Biden get?
81?
81, sorry, yes.
81 million votes. There were not that many votes out there. He could not have gotten that many.
But that goes back to what Ray just said. You know, the logic, total number of votes that even Nancy Pelosi, the Democrat, says that Trump got. Deduct that, well, then what's left is what Biden got.
Right.
I mean,
you would think.
Well, there was another candidate in there, which would have made
But
it
then
even
that-
lower.
It's even less.
yeah,
It's
but
even
then
less.
obviously, but then that was the maximum that Biden could have gotten, assuming the other candidate got 0. Okay, so logic dictates that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all we're saying. That's all. You know, I'm not going to speak.
And
to
see,
you
you don't know where
where
the error was. Maybe they miscounted Trump's vote and said
You know
he
what would
had
be a great
75
idea?
million.
Let's do an audit. Let's find out.
Well, that's the thing. You know, the good news is here. You say, look, the election was fair and square. Yes, I agree. It was fair and square. Let's just prove it by an audit.
Let's check it.
The only people who fear an investigation are those who have something to hide.
All right, so Ron, something happened today that I thought was very instrumental. I want to get to this before we end the show. So there was an emergency authorization to take what was never used for COVID-19. It was I believe the coronavirus test, and there was an emergency authorization that was used to test for COVID-19 using a higher scale of what do they call it? Not circulars, but cycles, right? They were testing at about 34, 35 cycles, where normally it should be at 25. Okay, that emergency authorization has now been deauthorized. It's no longer going to be used. They believe that they have a separate test specifically for COVID-19. So the question is, we closed down not only our country, we closed down the entire world on an emergency authorization to test for a virus that we weren't unaware of what it was, right? So now why did they take away the emergency authorization? Because they said that it wasn't up to the standard and that this other one is now better.
Right.
So we've closed the whole world based on something that really they've admitted
false standard.
Yeah, isn't the best way
And if
to
you
do
do
it.
the numbers, 99.4% survivability.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
Look, I spent 7 years in Africa. I got yellow fever once. I got malaria twice. I got cholera once. And I got bit one time, full double fang penetration from a black mamba. And I survived all of that. You know,
Wow.
and I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't taken a shot. I take hydroxychloroquine.
And how many ex-wives do you have?
Well.
And you survived those as well?
Yes.
They were harder than all of those things that you mentioned.
She was fine.
The bottom line on all of this stuff is that the numbers don't match.
No.
They don't add up. It's like the audit. Numbers don't match. And you're right. The survival rate, depending on your age,
right,
has been like 99.9 for younger people. It goes down to 99.1.
Look, I have the
elderly.
COVID antibodies in my system. My doctor found them, and he said, based on the, he joked, he says, based on the amount of antibodies, he said, boy, did you get it, and you got it good. And I'm thinking, hold on a second, since last March, I haven't taken a full day off. I've had maybe Sunday afternoons, and I've never felt sick since last March. What's that? Yeah, 16, 17 months? So I got COVID, and I never knew it?
So here's my point, Ron. They've just released Banner. We know that Banner is now going to mandate that all of their employees have the COVID shot, right? And now we hear that the VA, too, will, I believe it's going to be the shot as well.
No, it was masks.
Yeah. Oh, masks. Okay. So the point is that what they call the vaccine, the shot, the mRNA, is still done by an emergency authorization. These are not tried and true and passed according to the guidelines
We're going to have to get out. But more people die of flu than die of COVID, actually.
Not last year. Nobody died of flu.
No, nobody, because nobody had any. Because if you had the flu,
they didn't count the flu. They just counted it as
anyway,
part of
ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We have had Michael Morrison here, and a great guy, and we're trying to convince him to do a really neat show. And
Can I be the comic relief?
Yeah, you can be. What was Johnny Carson's sidekick?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, we'll see you Wednesday night. And by the way, Thursday night on the Jay Lawrence Show.
Do your research.
Yeah.
Everybody, do your research and get involved.
You know who's here? Matt Salmon.
Oh, Matt Salmon's coming. All right.
Thursday night on the Jay Lawrence Show. We'll see you Wednesday night. Don't you go away. Yeah.